Hello and welcome to Counterpressed on The Ringer and Spotify. I'm in the studio with Gilly, Flaherty and Jessy Humphreys. On today's show, we discuss a big weekend of derbies as Manchester City were dominant in Manchester and Chelsea and Arsenal dropped points. Wow. Big weekend, actually. A lot of surprises and dramas.
I think a big weekend, but not as exciting a weekend.
Oh, I was excited.
You were excited?
Yeah.
I just felt like the Manchester derby was like kind of over and done with pretty quick. Arsenal Spurs was obviously not the world's most exciting game.
But I think maybe less so in individual performances, but the results and the narrative switch is really interesting.
If you had gone to sleep on Friday night and woken up on Monday morning, you'd feel excited.
Yeah, I think everything is about keeping
me.
everything is about keeping the title race alive and dramatic. And
if
I
you
think
ask
this
Chelsea
weekend,
fans, it's over. City have done it.
because they need to get over it and stop being so dramatic. Anyone watch I'm a Celeb last night? Alex Scott?
Oh, did it start last night?
No.
Jessy!
What? No, okay. Can I just say, my wag has been like, blah, 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 we got to watch I'm a Celeb, doo-doo-doo-doo.
You didn't even know it started last night?
I didn't even know, but it's her responsibility, isn't it?
I'm always one episode behind.
Yeah.
Because I find it really hard to stay up
at
late.
work anyway.
Yeah, but like it comes on at 9, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was driving home then.
Yeah.
But normally I'll have to watch it the next night because I'm normally in bed.
I will
ready at
say
half
it
8.
did go quite late. It finished after 10:30.
Also, those first episodes I feel like always really boring because they're just introducing people.
Yeah, so this one was normally on the first episode there's always a big sort of shock challenge, but only one group had to jump out of a plane and the other group just had to sort of have their head in a box while Snake was in there. It felt like very different challenges.
I'd prefer to jump out the plane, to be honest.
Really?
Well, actually, I hate both. I hate heights, but I hate creepy crawlers. I would never go on this show.
Yeah.
You could not pay me enough money in the world to go on this show.
It is a lot. But Alex Scott's crew, they had to do the head in the box thing. So it was her, Jack Osborne,
Love.
Angry Ginger, the YouTuber guy, Ruby Wax, and Linda Riley off Emmerdale.
These shows, I'm just like, who are some of these people? Motley Crue, for sure.
Absolute Motley Crue. And then if you got this golden key, you could get a nice, you got a steak and a bed, and you got to go in a nice journey to the camp. But if you didn't, you got in this hilarious car that had a huge cockroach on it, and it sort of stunk, and there were bugs in it. And you got that, and then they got to the camp, and then they had to unlock these keys to get their food for the night, and there was just sort of cockroaches and ants and everything being chucked on them. Kelly Brook's in it, which is great.
Oh, I love Kelly Brook.
She was
After
great
her
on
appearance on
Celebrity Race Across the World.
Yes.
So, and her hilarious London Marathon appearance as well.
Yes.
So I think she has a chance of winning. But I want Alex to do well.
So what did Alex team...
She had to help sort of unlock things while they were chucking bugs.
So did they get the
They got the
steak
6
and that?
stars. Oh no, the other team got the steak as the luxury thing. And then that was it. That was the end of the episode. So it did drag on a bit.
Alex seems like quite a pro at these kind of shows. We were talking about her appearance on the Bear Grylls one before we started recording.
So that completely passed me by. Was that the one where celebrities were sort of stranded on an island and then...
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. All I can remember of it is that she won it.
Right.
But it's like they have to fight for survival, innit? In there.
Right. So she's actually sort of already had a
where did she
crack.
finish in... She didn't win strictly.
No,
Where
maybe
did she finish?
I think she
okay.
She got to Blackpool.
She got to Blackpool. Did
Because
Karen
when
Carney get to Blackpool?
Yes, because when I was watching on the
Nice.
weekend, Tess did this link, and it was about will Karen also go to Blackpool like Alex Scott did back in whenever she did it. So Karen, spoiler alert, is going to Blackpool.
Well, thank you for keeping me updated on this stuff. It's
This is-
important to see what our
I feel
girlies
like I
are
don't
up
need
to.
to watch that first episode now, strictly though. I feel
I'm a
Celebrity.
celebrity.
No,
I
I'm
think
just
I'll get
gonna-
into
I'm
it.
just gonna watch.
Start from
No, I'm
tonight.
not watching any of this show.
I will get into it. I sometimes find it hard to sort of, maintain and keep up the endurance that it takes for these shows because they're on every night. Strictly
Yeah.
Elise is once a week, and then the result show's only like 45 minutes, so it's not a huge commitment. But these shows are on every night. Like Maths was a hell of a commitment for me. That was a real
Sometimes they're a
commitment.
good background filler though.
Yeah.
Like if you're pottering about indoors
Or
or doing
cooking
stuff,
or-
you can have it on in
yeah.
the background and then come really back for the trials. That's
Yeah.
the main.
If
Yeah.
you were going to get a call up, Jill, if
Yeah.
you if your agent was going to say, Gilly, I've got an offer for you, what show would you be hoping they'd be asking for you to come
Celebrity Big Brother, I reckon.
on? Oh, you would be so good on that.
I reckon I would rather do. I couldn't
would
do
be so
bugs.
good on that.
I couldn't do Strictly.
I would
Maybe
love,
like a baking.
Jill, I'd love to see you
Love
on
to get British Bake
Strictly.
Off.
Yeah, British Bake Off.
I'd
MasterChef.
love to see you on Strictly, Jill. 'Cause
No.
they could put you with a woman dance partner, so we could get one of those great lesbian partnerships.
Hers and hers.
Yeah.
that'd be
Yeah.
me.
You and Katya, I can see it. But Big Brother, I could see you getting some almighty rows with people.
Yeah, I reckon I'd just be like head lost though.
You would
Yeah,
be
I
proper
think you might be
Things
headlock.
would start to annoy me after a little bit.
You'd be
I think you
cancelled.
might be cancelled.
Jilly get thrown out for saying something offensive.
I'd be like, just stop chewing loudly or like slapping while you're eating next to me.
Yeah.
Like,
That would. Oh, I'd love to see
It's
that.
so good.
I'd love to see that. Okay, shall we talk about some football then? Let's get into it. We'll start with the Manchester derby next. So, Manchester City smashing Man United 3-0 at the Etihad. It was a very one-sided derby in the end, pretty much all over by the first half. Jessy, what did you make of, let's start with City's very dominant, impressive performance?
City did everything you want a team not playing in the Champions League to do, and I think something that's maybe worth reflecting on is how all three Champions League teams ended up looking over the weekend. But yeah, they just looked so sharp. They looked on it. I thought United defended pretty poorly for kind of all three of the goals, but you've got to be in a position to make the most of those opportunities, and they did. They just looked really genuinely up for it. I think having Lauren Hemp back, you can see how much of a difference she makes to their team, especially going forward. I think there's been points this season where they've maybe, they've looked good going forward without being able to necessarily be ruthless, and I thought she really just adds another question for teams to have to deal with. I think Rebecca Knack and Jade Rose are looking like they could be a really solid duo pushing on, because I think, again, maybe part of what's been lacking for City is as they've moved to a system where they're not so positionally rigorous, at times it's felt like their defence has been exposed, but they've obviously had a lot of issues with injuries, with younger players playing. Kasparai was great again as well, continuing to have an amazing season. Also really enjoyed the transphobic Manchester United fan on Twitter who was like losing their mind at Kasparai, like running the show. That was really a highlight of my weekend. But yeah, I thought City were really good, really dominant. It's hard not to feel like a little bit like you're looking at question marks at United, because I think for me that was kind of what I took away. I just thought United did defend so badly. But yeah, City are in a great position, and I think we said it last week that when you're that fourth team out the top four who doesn't have Champions League, who doesn't have those midweek games, you kind of want to be setting the pace, because I feel like you don't really have like an excuse of having to rotate, having to travel midweek, having to play, and City are doing that.
I mean, travel midweek. Don't disrespect the Subway Cup. It's not quite the same. But
yeah, but they didn't have Subway Cup this
No.
week. So, and it obviously, if you're playing a team, the new format of the Champions League, I think specifically, is what makes this so much harder. You're not in a position, last season, Chelsea would be playing three teams that were all ranked below them. This season, Chelsea have to play Barcelona on Thursday. Barcelona aren't in the Subway Cup. As sad as that is.
I think there was a bit of that would be good. There was a bit of discourse as well about how tight that United turnaround was, having played. Obviously, they played at Old Trafford, but they played on the Wednesday night, not the Tuesday night, and then playing on the Saturday. Whereas obviously other teams are playing on the Sunday. You lose that day, but we'll get on to the Manchester United element because Skinner talked about it a little bit in the post match. But Gilly, from a defensive point of view, had some requests from flops on Twitter to give some love to Jade Rose, and it's been an amazing step up for her coming from college into professional football. But also when she played that opening game against Chelsea, which was tough for a lot of new players, but also a new manager coming into the league, like she did struggle in that game. But as she's become more comfortable, she's lent on her great positioning, her great physicality, her awareness. We're kind of seeing the best of her. And as Jessy touched on, she's had to work with a lot of different centre-backs this season because of injuries. They've still got Alex Greenwood out at the moment. But she looks like she looks so experienced, even though she's still very young. And that's kind of amazing to see.
I worked on that night, that first game, obviously City, Chelsea, and I was a bit nervous for City, I think, because I was a bit like, she's obviously a young player, inexperienced, and it was a bit, you're potentially going to be the starting centre-back for them. And obviously the way she played in that Chelsea game, nothing really like, as a centre-back as well, I was a bit like, wow, like she's been a brilliant signing for them. But I think every player who signs in the WSL, any player who comes over, really see that first season, it's not a write-off because some players hit the ground running, but they have to be given time to get into the league. And then also she's had the difficulty then of having different centre-back partners, which isn't ideal at all. But I think if you're looking at the part that she played for Kasparai's cross in, you know, how she steps out from defence. I mean, Mia Zhao doesn't really do herself any justice because she don't put the brakes on at all and just comes flying out. But most centre-backs there probably would have panicked and either looked for a pass or ended up giving the ball away. But she was just really direct with it, able to drive forward, commit players, and then obviously then played the pass then for Kasparai to whip the ball in. But I think from a player point of view, the best way to get that experience is playing and then having the confidence each week to just grow into the league. And it's also probably her first experience playing against most of them players. So then come next season, when she's like, okay, right, this is how I mark this player, this is how I deal with this player, she's then able to probably go up another level as well.
And she has immense bravery because and aggression in defending her box, which I think is actually really lacking in the WSL and sometimes in women's football as a whole. Like, I think Millie Bright's phenomenal at this. Like, someone you know will attack the ball in defensive situations. Jade Rose gets that huge egg on her head after clashing with Simi Awuju, who has to go off. And even on that next cross, she's still ready to attack the ball with a huge, gigantic egg on her head. And I think that probably sums up her character and kind of how she is such a phenomenal defender, because she is always kind of switched on, ready in the moment, and she's always ready to kind of be aggressive in those situations. Actually, when it comes to defending in the WSL, like, I could probably count on one hand the number of defenders who are that aggressive in those situations, Joe.
Yeah, and I think I'm the first one to be vocal about defending in the WSL. I think the art of defending has been lost a little bit. And I think it's now a natural thing for players to drop off in the box. I don't know whether that's a fear of giving away a penalty or something like that. But defenders, you're the clue is in the title. You're there to defend. You're there to be on your front foot, you know, get your body on the line. And I say they don't make them like us anymore. You know what I mean? But she's setting a good example for the young ones coming through.
Jessy, City were really aggressive in their press as well, and I think it helps when you've got some players who are looking quite fresh. And just this season, Alba Fugino is just in her element, because I think under Gareth Taylor, it took a while for her to actually look really comfortable in this league. But I've been really impressed with her physicality. And I think she was, I know, obviously, understandably, Lauren Hemp gets a lot of praise for the goal that she scored and how she played in this game. And Shaw, Miedemar, that like trio starting for the first time since Hemp got injured. But for Gino, I just think this season we're seeing a new level to her as well.
Yeah, well, I think what I really like about Fugino is it feels like she's got and Lauren Hemp, I think, has this ability as well, but they kind of use it less because of the players who are behind them. But Fugino's got this ability to like come inside and do the more technical elements of the game, but she's also got the ability to make runs in behind and stretch the play. But it just creates, like, I think, a level of unpredictability about that right side for City, because Kasparai can get so advanced as well, and she can then come, you know, which you see for the second goal, and like whipping across like that. And I think it's that ability to, especially with the way that now City are playing more of a double pivot with Blinkilda Brown and Hasegawa rather than the sort of the single pivot before. It just, I think, allows City to create different shapes when they're in their attack, whereas I feel like before under Taylor, it felt like they were a bit more predictable in terms of maybe wanting both those wingers to just sort of get crosses into the box. And I think Fugino just really suits that sort of variety in terms of being able to make different decisions when she's got the ball higher up the pitch.
Let's talk about United, because it was a really poor showing from them. They just never looked in the game, didn't register a shot on target all game, which is really poor. Skinner spoke afterwards about how exhausted his players were. He also said that he felt like they were in the game, which I didn't see that. But I want to focus more on the comments about, he reflected that for a lot of them, the training before this match, they couldn't fully take part. They were having to walk through training because some players were kind of so at their limit, so exhausted. I think you did see a very tired team, and maybe we've sort of been creeping up to this point, and having put in a really good performance midweek, obviously lost that Villa game. 3 really intense games when you've got Villa, who are playing well, PSG, and then Manchester City. You see the kind of mental and physical fatigue in this squad. We see Saf Middleton-Patel starting again, now being confirmed about Valentine Joyce's eye fracture. And I think all of that kind of takes its toll, and it just felt like United just never got going in this match at all. Elizabeth Turlin has to start. They weren't really figuring out whether they wanted to go direct to her or what their build-up was going to be. I think there was a brief 5-minute period when Mallard came on and did kind of cause a few more problems. But Jill, it was a really poor showing from United.
Yeah, I think if everyone was honest, then the game was done and dusted by half-time. And it was disappointing as well, because you think, where is a Manchester derby and how it's been the last few ones, for it to be done and dusted by then, it just, I think, probably made it a bit more flat for the rest of the game. But it is difficult because you've come off the back of a defeat against Villa. You've then got a midweek game against PSG, who it's not like you can rest any players for that, because that's another tough game. And then the next day, the day after a game is always going to be recovery. And then the day after that, you're looking at, you might be doing some walkthroughs or, set piece or things like that. But then you've then got Man City. So it's not like you've then got another game which might be against a team at the lower table. You can go, right, we can afford players to maybe rest this training session as well, or we're not able to have to change much. So I think in that sense, it's going to be tiring for them. And they don't have, obviously Mark Skinner's openly said that the squad is a small squad. They don't have that luxury of probably being able to go, I'm going to change near enough the whole 11. We have to stick with it. But when we was doing the women's football show last night, we was running through the way that obviously Man United play in possession. And Hemp's goal comes from the fact of, with Jess Park, who's meant to be out on the right wing, is so far inside, and Rivier's bomb forward, that then they have their midfielder, I don't know who it was, but one of the midfielders come out to the space that Riviere had left. And what I was explaining to Farah last night is that even if you have a midfielder drop in to do that right back position, they're not fullback. So you're looking at how that play builds up. Lauren Hemp does really well because she checks off of the player. But the player's not even looking at Lauren Hemp. Naturally is in a midfielder position, then having to drop back to defence. It's different. It's your body shape's different, and your just awareness is different as well. So that's come from Park being in, Riviere bombing forward, and it's obviously come from Man United being in position and turning it over, and then neither of them really having the legs. Riviere didn't even have the legs to get back anyways. But you're just seeing that tiredness and that fatigue creep in, and then the mistakes happen.
And what's funny about that goal as well is United actually break City's press, right? But then it's like just that, like there's one like passing error after they've broken the press, and then City counter press, like turn over the ball and Rivier's out of position. But I think again that kind of shows the impact of that tiredness, where actually it's not like your defenders are getting caught on the ball. Like you have broken City's press, you are moving up the pitch, but that like one error turns everything back around, and then you're all out of position.
And Rivier's had such a good season. She looked absolutely cooked. She had to go off at the hour mark, and I think you saw that with a lot of these players. I mean, United even had an 18-year-old midfielder on the bench, which I think says a lot about kind of the lack of squad depth. I know Skinner's spoken a lot about the January reinforcements, but also you don't necessarily know what position you're going to be in January. Obviously, they put themselves in a really good position in the Champions League, having won their first 3 games, but if you're relying a lot on January, you don't know where you're going to be in the league by that point. How far off the title are you going to be? Are you hopefully still obviously going to be in the position around the Champions League places? Probably they'll be in the next round of the Champions League, but we'll have to see with these next few games. So I think there's a lot of pressure now on this January window to kind of really deliver something big for them. But there was a bit of an inevitability. Like I think we've said this throughout the start of the season, that Can they cope? Will they manage it? And United fans have acknowledged that as well. And this felt like a real harsh wake-up call of, God, these players are struggling, and we're middle of November.
Yeah, and the thing that's tough with, a January window is it can be a bit of a coin flip in terms of how those players are going to be able to have an impact, right? Like, you look at United bringing in someone like Park in the summer, and, like, that's amazing. Like, she's taken to that role, the club, like a duck to water. Equally, you look at, say, Chelsea bringing Walsh in last January, and that being something that maybe, Chelsea have only seen sort of the benefits of this season, because sometimes it takes time for players to adjust. We're just talking about Rose, whether it's players coming from a different league or players adjusting to a new system or just like the nature of stuff. It can be quite hard to come in January and make a big impact. I think what Skinner probably deserves credit for is the development of sort of two kind of distinct versions of United, where sometimes we see them using Turland as the 9, sometimes we see them using Mal as the 9, and I think that has allowed them to rotate more efficiently than, as I say, maybe in the past we've seen what teams try and do is just play players into the ground and go for as long as they go. I do think United feel like a more flexible team than that, but it is hard. And like, again, we said it before, like, United have never done this. Like, if you're that Chelsea squad, you've spent, okay, the Champions League format has changed, and I think that is bringing its own challenges for everyone, but you've spent, year in, year out, even the year where Chelsea went out in the group stages, they still spent, the winter in this position where you know what it's like to play these high-level games and then play WSL. For United, like, lots of these players have never, ever done that before, and that's a shift as well.
Yeah, and it doesn't let up. United have got to play Wolfsburg this week, and we know Wolfsburg haven't made an amazing start to the Champions League, but it's still a squad stacked with talent. Manchester City, on the other hand, they've got Forest in the Conti Cup this weekend. So,
well, don't judge Forest. Who did Forest get? Forest got a result against Everton, I think. So
in the Subway Cup.
I think that's become quite a fun random group, because obviously City also drew with Newcastle.
Yeah, there's been some interesting results so far in
group.
Subway Cup, but yeah, it's a much different prospect. Yeah. And because of Chelsea and Arsenal's drop points, well, obviously Arsenal were way off the top anyway, but it's been a very good weekend for City all round. They're 3 points clear at the top, and City fans must be absolutely buzzing, because there was a narrative that lots of us mentioned at the start of the season, which is, can City make the most of the opportunity of not being in Europe and having a squad that looks fairly deep now? Obviously, we haven't really seen enough of Grace Clinton yet, because she's had her injury issues. She was on the bench on the weekend. Carolyn's still out. Alex Green was out. So they're still not even at full strength. But it is exciting. I know they're only 3 points clear, but I'm excited at the prospect of maybe someone else winning the league, Gilly. We've waited for this.
Yeah, but I mean, they have to, they've been in a position before.
Yes,
and
I know.
They flopped. So it's
but
about.
I think they do look like a different animal under Yeglitz. I'm a really big fan of Andre Yeglitz, and I think that's also impressive to say. New manager coming into the league, and I think that was the other question mark about, can they capitalise on not being in Europe, but also how long will it take for them to click under this new manager? And there were signs in even that Chelsea defeat that they were moving in the right direction. I do really enjoy watching the football that they play. It requires quite a lot from his squad, definitely in terms of how they press, from fitness, athleticism, etc., etc. So it's going to be interesting how they maintain that. But I think we're seeing a team reach a really nice rhythm, players coming into form, Miedemar, Shaw. I think, yeah, I'm interested to see how they can keep it up, Jill.
Yeah, and I also think maybe with there being no Champions League for them, that hopefully then they'll be able to keep Shaw and Miedemar fit for the duration of the season, because I think that's what's been the issue with City previously, is that when they've got all their players full strength, they've managed to do it and get results, but it's when they then lose a couple of players to injury, that's when it sort of declines. But I think, as much as I am a former Chelsea player, I do think it's good for the league to have it competition, and I like to see it go to the wire, to be honest with you.
And I think there has been, like, I don't think it's bad. I understand why people are excited, but people can get overexcited. Like, 3 points is literally one weekend of results effectively changing. And I think City have done everything they need to do, right? They've only lost the first game of the season, which was probably their hardest game of the season, Chelsea away. They've won their tricky home games, but equally that kind of means in the second half of the season, they've got to go away to United, away to Arsenal. So both of them will be harder. Okay, they've still got to play Chelsea again, but they get to play them at home. I guess the important thing that I think City have done is not just win the big games against Arsenal and United, although I think that Arsenal one was a bit of like, that was just a bit of a crazy game anyway. So I don't think that necessarily showed City at their best, whereas maybe, Saturday was a better example of that. But you've got to win. Don't drop points against stupid teams, which is what Chelsea, United and Arsenal have all done this season, because if you drop points against stupid teams, you leave yourself with way more work to do and more pressure on those big games. And that's kind of been the issue City have found themselves in the past, right? Like when we're talking about like City bottling the league before, that was because they lost to Arsenal. Okay, it's kind of funny because of how dramatic that game was, but on the face of it, there's nothing wrong with losing to Arsenal. So you just want to be in a position where those results, if they maybe don't go your way in the games, that the big games, that you're not, giving yourself way more work to do, which is obviously the position that now, say Chelsea are in, for example.
Yeah, well, that's a perfect segue to talk about the teams that drop points this weekend. We'll talk about Chelsea dropping points to Liverpool and Spurs drawing with Arsenal after this. So we'll start with Chelsea, Jessy. Apologies, because I know you got a bit grumpy after this one. It wasn't the best.
That was a secret.
Sorry. Shock. Jessy was grumpy after Chelsea dropped points. It wasn't a great showing from Chelsea. And actually, I think Liverpool do deserve credit. I think they defended really well. There are a couple of late chances where they could have actually nicked it. And obviously, this is a famously cursed fixture for Chelsea anyway. It always throws up some really fun results. But all in all, a very frustrating performance from Chelsea. We saw the early brilliant goal from Alyssa Thompson, and you think, okay, are Chelsea going to build their lead here? Kat Macario misses a really good chance to put it 2-0, and then the game starts to shift. Liverpool look comfortable, they get their equaliser, and Chelsea really struggled to break them down. And 3 big substitutions from Sonia Bonpastor at half-time to try and change the game. Didn't work. Jessy, what's your assessment of back-to-back draws for Chelsea?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that was the kind of stat flying around, wasn't it? It was the first time sort of Chelsea had that kind of result since 2021 or whatever. I mean, it's hard because I'm like, the Arsenal game was just sort of a crazy one, and then Chelsea still go and win midweek. But I think what this game showed is, Chelsea have had, I think really since the back end of last season into this season, a problem with putting games to bed. And it's something that Bonpastor's spoken about. She's kind of put it on her players, but I think obviously also she has to kind of take responsibility for maybe why Chelsea aren't able to do that. But they are in this position where they allow teams to get back into games rather than killing them off by scoring 1, 2, 3 goals. I think there's a little bit of this, I think, is kind of the reality of the WSL changing. And I don't think Chelsea are the only team who have this problem, but I think Chelsea have it at the most extreme at the moment. But I think, throughout the season, you've seen the result, teams struggle because they've not been able to put games away, like think of Arsenal and Villa, for example. And so I do think we're in a position where now, maybe with those mid-table teams, it's not like they're going to get a result every week, but maybe where 2 or 3 years ago they would concede 2 or 3 goals, on the bounce, that they've kind of got that sort of tactical and mental rigour to avoid that happening. I also think, a lot's been made obviously of Liverpool not having a win this season, but I think anyone who sort of watched Liverpool would know that they've kind of been better than that, at least like defensively. And I think you saw that in the game that they did defend well, and Chelsea really struggled to create anything. So yeah, I think Chelsea have looked pretty poor in attack. I think part of that comes from, rotating through a variety of 9s, through none of those players really ending up in great form, aside from sort of Aggie's run at the start of the season. I thought Aggie looked bright when she came on, apart from the fact that she couldn't stay on side at all. But even that sort of fizzled out kind of after like 15 minutes or so. So, yeah, I think it's a poor result for Chelsea. I think it, speaks to this kind of strange version of this team we've got at the moment where they can look really good for half an hour, for 45 minutes, for 60 minutes, and then it sort of disappears, and it feels hard to pinpoint whether that's, tiredness, and so the out of possession stuff fades away, whether it's sort of like a lack of concentration. I think they've looked that the rest defence and like the transition opportunities have looked poor, and Liverpool obviously exploited that in this game, but again it feels like Chelsea are giving up one or two big chances a game, which is fine. And in the past Chelsea have kind of been that team, but it's fine if you're creating a lot, and this game was a perfect example of like Chelsea really didn't create that much at all.
A couple of things I want to pick up on. There's some very nervous Chelsea fans in our Instagram questions thinking about Livia Peng playing against Barcelona this week, so we'll get onto that and Hannah Hampton's absence. But what you said there, Jessy, about Chelsea struggling to create an attack, you've got a mix of new players sort of coming into this system. I think Alyssa Thompson has been really phenomenal going forward, but defensively she's still trying to like figure out where she goes, what she does, how she tracks. But also the rotation, the relentless rotation from Bonpastor, which some of that has been through injury because Aggie's been out and she's been the most informed player they've had. But some of it has been the way that she wants to use her squad. Do we think we're starting to see a bit of a issue with you're losing that attacking connection because you're rotating through so much?
I personally don't think so, because I think when you have this lineup come out for yesterday, I felt like that was almost entirely what was expected. We've seen that midfield three of Walsh, Cuthbert, Captain play a lot in the league. Aggie's been injured, Sam was rested, so you have to start Kat as the 9. And then I think JRK and Alyssa Thompson make sense as the winger. So I don't really feel like that. And I think, again, sometimes the rotation stuff feels a bit like you can be damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you play the same players and they get injured, everyone's saying, well, why didn't you rotate? I do feel like, logically, given the amount that these players had played. And, before the match, 4 players in Chelsea's team had played every minute of the WSL this season. Which was Hampton, Bjorn, Bright and Walsh. So, a real like sort of core at the back of your team. So I do kind of think it's like, it feels like it can be a little bit over-egged. I think it's more to do with, and also the rotation kind of speaks to this, is like there aren't necessarily many players who feel like who are making you think you have to play them every game. I think Alyssa Thompson probably is one of those players. But, like Macaria is someone who feels really frustrating. You get moments like the FA Cup final and you're like, okay, this is the player we signed, this is what we want. And then, she'll go through these dips in form. I mean, the miss is obviously like really glaring in that moment. But I think generally you could tell like she just didn't look quite right, and I can see why she was hooked at half time. So, yeah, I mean, I still think it was funny, like, watching Kerr and what Kerr can create.
I think what a lot of
midweek,
fans,
and then going back to watching Cat Mac play, you're like, oh.
A lot of fans were frustrated not to see Kerr, and appreciate she's still coming, making her way back to full fitness, and she played all of that game midweek, which is a big one for her. So I think a lot of fans were frustrated that Bonpastor couldn't look to her as that 70, 80-minute option, because we spoke about in the last episode, she still just has that raw centre forwardness in her that she can cause problems anytime, and she's always ready, she's always alert. And there aren't many strikers in the WSL that can do that. I think Bunny Shaw's up there, Miedemar's up there, but who just has that ability to switch it on and terrify defenders. Jill, the other thing people are nervy about is Jessy spoke about, Chelsea are conceding a lot of chances, and this wasn't a game necessarily where we've seen so far this season or last season where Hannah Hampton sort of bailed Chelsea out with these really strong performances. But Payne did have to make a couple of saves. But a lot of Chelsea fans are stressed about Barcelona in the Champions League, Hannah Hampton not being fit, and what could be awaiting them at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult because obviously with Hampton, you're talking about the goalie side of it, but also what she brings in regards to distribution and the way she plays. And sometimes when you don't have that, then that's when you realise how much of a loss it is. And this is what I think is obviously interesting from a neutral point of view in regards to the new Champions League format, is because, you wouldn't be seeing Chelsea against Barcelona not until the latter stage of the competition. So it is difficult because it's a bit like the one time, obviously in regards to Hampton, you would be hoping that she would be. But also in regards to Sam Kerr, I wonder as well if they'd have known now how this weekend was going to go, I wonder if it'd have been right, instead of playing Sam for the full game, would it have been better to have her maybe coming up to 60 minutes and then knowing then, all right, then remaining 30 that she's going to be on managing minutes, could we then have that, say, for Liverpool, for example, to be able to come on, because obviously I know firsthand how hard it is to deal with Sam Kerr. But I think as well for Chelsea, you're looking at Liverpool's goal. Chelsea are in possession, and I think that's when the opposition teams are most dangerous, because I think where they're in possession so often, it's the chance for defenders to switch off. I know there was talk, obviously, online especially, about Millie Bright and her positioning, which I think is hard, because I think the distance between her and Bjorn is really big. But you're looking at it, it's come from Chelsea being in possession in the first place, so they are expansive when they're playing. I think I don't know whether it's tired bodies and tired minds, but I think their reaction to Liverpool stepping in and winning the ball in a turnover, the reaction from the players in and around was poor. I think that a lot of them were walking, or just a bit like, and then Bjorn is too far away from the forward, and then is sort of caught in no man's land where she tries to get tight. She does get unlucky with a deflection that gets played through, but the distance between her and Millie Bright, and then I don't think any really centre-back would have been able to make that distance up to get there. But in an ideal world, if Bjorn gets tight in the first place, then that doesn't then, if the ball even does go across to the player that was near Keira Walsh, then the through ball wouldn't happen, because then Bjorn would be in the more of the foot race. But from a Millie Bright point of view, she probably should have come over a little bit closer as Bjorn steps in. But then credit to, say, Gareth Taylor, because I spoke yesterday and I said when Emma Hayes was when we was at Chelsea and we come up against City, the one person that we focused on stopping was Keira Walsh because of her distribution. And we used to have, 9 times out of 10, it was G who would end up sitting on Keira Walsh. And then if obviously sort of worked as a front two, if the ball then went out to the other centre back, G might be that player to come and press, and the centre forward would drop down on her, because we knew how good she was with the distribution and being able to pass forward. And then I think you're talking about Gareth Taylor, that experience of being at a top team. That's what he made Liverpool do. So then Liverpool, the front two, Olsen and Capox, were literally doing that. One going, one sitting on her. And then it frustrates Chelsea, and then you then resort to then doing longer balls over the top or kicking the ball out of play, because they can't get Keira Walsh on the ball, who dictates a lot of the play.
How are you feeling about Barca on Thursday, Jessy?
I mean, like, it's kind of a strange position, because it feels like it's something that kind of maybe psychologically matters more than it does on a footballing sense. I mean, obviously, like, Chelsea do want to finish in the top four in this Champions League. So you don't want to necessarily be losing this game, but I also think it's not necessarily the end of the world if they lose this game. But you want to, I think, not be in a position where you're getting battered, obviously, especially given what happened last year. I think it's going to be a really interesting question for Bompastor, because I think, she had a lot to answer for last year in terms of how Chelsea really struggled, I think, especially in that first leg, and then they were also obviously shit in the second leg as well, but like it didn't really matter at that point. We've seen her come up with good game plans before against Barcelona. It'll be interesting, because I think, you could, if Chelsea come out and play well, which I mean is a big if, I guess, at this point in time, but then you're sitting there thinking, well, how much were they kind of ignoring this Liverpool game or not thinking about it as much because they wanted to focus so much on Barcelona? We're never going to know, obviously, how time gets divvied up, but it's hard when, we've spoken about these turnarounds already. We talk about turnarounds a lot from a fitness perspective, I think it's hard. We don't necessarily talk about them from a tactical perspective, and I guess that's because you think of Chelsea as having their own principles of play, and maybe you just take, especially when you're playing against teams who aren't very good, you just take them from game to game. But there's still a huge amount of work that's going to go on behind the scenes in terms of watching all of Liverpool's games and coming up with ways to hurt them, and you lose time to do that obviously when you have these midweek games. And if you've got Barcelona on Thursday, are your thoughts already drifting there? Barcelona will obviously be favourites. I didn't watch any of the Clasico, but it sounds like Real Madrid gave them a good game, which will be interesting. And I think it sounds like Real Madrid caused them issues in terms of their press, especially early on in the game. Now, Chelsea have had moments this season where I thought they've looked amazing out of possession, and they've had moments where you would think they'd never heard the word pressing in their life. So again, this is kind of what feels a bit strange about this Chelsea team right now, is it feels very unpredictable in terms of how they show up. So to that extent, I could see it going both ways. I'm certain whatever happens, everyone will over-egg the result way too much.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like you say, it's a league phase, but I think the psychological element is interesting, because if you get a decent result in this, mentally it will leave you feeling good heading into the knockout stages, where you're likely to face them at some point along the way.
I could 100% see Chelsea winning that game on Thursday and still getting battered by them. So that's what I mean. I think either way, it will all become over.
Let's touch on what happened in North London Derby. It wasn't a classic, guys. It was a bit of a snooze fest. It was 0-0. It's a really good point for Spurs, and I think Spurs defended really well in this game, and they were organised and they were disciplined. They did go for about an hour without having a shot, so I think that tells you...
their XG was 0.2.
It tells you everything you need to know. And there was some real Stina Blackstenius chances that went missing. But all in all, looking at, the conversation from Arsenal fans online, the messages that we got in the questions, what kind of, the feeling is in general is it's yet another frustrating result and performance from Arsenal. A lot of people saying they just felt was a little bit kind of toothless. And people looking for answers to why this real poor run, and not necessarily just this run, but poor start to the season. Obviously, it's coming off the back of the result against Bayern Munich, this particular performance. But in general, they've got fewer wins than London City, I think, this season, Arsenal. And yeah, fans are frustrated. Coming off the huge Champions League win, this excitement, this energy for the new season. Jessy, what do you kind of put this down to? Because a lot of Arsenal fans, we spoke about their recruitment after the Bayern game, but a lot of Arsenal fans are feeling like, why is this going so wrong for us? And they want answers. That's what I'm getting in the counter press Instagram questions is, what are the issues? Tell us. Is it the coach? Is it like people are frustrated?
It is bonkers. I'm just, looking now, and they've got 3 wins in 10.
Yeah.
That's poor. Because I think, they've obviously had a tough run in that time. Like some of the results they've not got are, United away, City away, they've lost to Lyon, they've drawn with Chelsea, they've lost to Bayern. Like all of those teams, you're like, on their own, you're like, yeah, okay. But it's the combination of all of them where you're like, if you were close in these games, at some point the variance will go your way, and it's like the variance is never going their way. Okay, obviously the Spurs game is a little bit different. I think the Mead-Ford wing combination is so yawnifying that you saw immediately.
It was a very wicked reference, yawnifying.
Well, we are going to see Wicked for Good this week
on Friday.
So,
yawnifying, I love that.
I thought as soon as Liv Smith came on, you could see what an impact she made. I'm sorry, I still can't get on board with the Blackstenius 9, Rousseau 10 vibe, especially against teams that are going to sit deep. I can subscribe to Blackstenius when you're going to play up against a high line and maybe be able to have a player running behind. But I really don't understand kind of the purpose of doing that against Tottenham. And yeah, I just think Arsenal just look quite dull, and
I think for me, what I'm seeing more and more in these last couple of weeks is a serious lack of plan B from Renee Slegers. Plan A, if that's going great, it's fine. She can ride it. It's all working out. But yes, the subs in the Chelsea game made an impact, but not necessarily with much intention. The game already felt like it was maybe swinging one direction. I'm struggling to see how she impacts games and changes them, Jill, and that's something that I'm feeling more and more and more is there is not much of a plan B from Renee Slegers.
Yeah, and I think there's been a lot of talk in this season about sort of the planned substitutions, and it's always the same people coming on. I mean, I watched the game and I just think you've got I think it's the 87th minute, you're bringing Chloe Kelly on. I'm just a bit as in, you really hoping she's going to get one chance to put it away. And it's just, why? Do you know what I mean? I don't get the reasoning behind that, but I think a positive for, I'm a bit divided on Olivia Smith, right? Because I don't think her price tag helps her in that sense, because I think there's an unbelievable amount of pressure for people to expecting her to deliver on a daily basis as such when it comes to games. I feel like she's great when she's a dribble and drive player. She loves to go into the space. I question her decision making in the final third a lot of the time. I think majority of the time it looks like it's very for her. So it's going to be, I'm going to have a shot. I don't think the awareness is really there in regards to players if they're in a better position than her. I think she sees the goal, and I think she's a typical forward player in that way, where it's, I'm going to try and do something. And I think where before we all know she's got that in her where she can get the ball from distance and she can ping it and it can go in. That's not going to happen every single time. So I'm a little bit divided in the sense of, I think she's really good and I think she done wonders at Liverpool, and I just think it's hard when it's that price tag.
Well, it's also, when you're talking about her at Liverpool, and I guess even before when she was in Portugal, they're teams where she's the best player, right? So that's why you're going to be like that, because they're probably, when she's at Liverpool, half the time if she's done the dribble and drive, there isn't anyone else with her.
Well,
so
I was
going to
say, she's also played, especially when she was at Liverpool, she was always used in transition, because that's how they were going to play, is that she was going to have to drive and kick and run or use her pace or find and exploit a high line, and she's so good at that, and she'd always have the space in front of her, whereas now it's a little bit different because she's having to be part of a team that has to break down teams a little bit more, because you're playing against a team that's sitting back, whereas you used to be the team that's sitting back and then could exploit them on the break, which she's so good at doing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's an adjustment for her, and that is something that's that is hard with the price tag and the expectation. And maybe in another world where Arsenal were better, there wouldn't be the same sort of focus on her doing that. Like, she'd have the time and space maybe to learn a little bit more about doing that, because it becomes sort of a bit of a catch-22, because you can also understand if you're coming on at half-time and the game's 0-0 and everyone's getting frustrated in attack, do you know what I mean? You're almost more encouraged to do that. You're not looking for the extra pass anymore because everyone's getting a bit more frantic. So I think, again, that comes back to something we've talked about before about Arsenal's sort of inability to evolve the team in a gradual way. It's we've got to spend £1 million on Olivia Smith and just put her in and hope it works. I think everyone knew that it was going to be quite unlikely that she was going to be a player who would fix everything in attack and be consistent throughout the season, because just her age and background, that's not going to be the player she is. You're buying her for the next 5 years, not for the next 5 minutes. But it feels I agree with Gilly. Then it becomes there's almost this pressure on, and you are focusing on her because of the price tag and because of the other players around her also not being able to deliver.
Well, there's no rest for the wicked
Hey!
for good, because the Champions League continues this week. Arsenal are going to face Real Madrid, Manchester United are playing Wolfsburg, and Chelsea are hosting Barcelona at Stamford Bridge on Thursday. It's also a big week at Counterpress Towers, because we've got a special episode with WSL Chief Executive Nikki Dissett that's coming out on Wednesday, so make sure you listen to that. And then we're going to be back on Friday because we're going to be talking about the Champions League. So a very big week here at Counterpress. So we'll see you on Wednesday for a special episode with Nikki Dissett, and then see you again on Friday. We'll see you then.